Hey, how's it going? Mike here, back again with the Usagi Podjimbo podcast. A podcast all about Usagi Yojimbo, the comic book series. And we talk about Miyamoto Usagi, the samurai rabbit we all know and love. It's been some time since I've actually put out an episode. I didn't want to leave you guys hanging for the month of December. I wanted to get one out, with my busy schedule and whatnot. I do another podcast, or I record another podcast called Otakuology, or I talk about anime and manga with one of my best buddies. So that kind of takes up my time a little bit, but I want to get back on schedule and talk about the comic book series that I have grown to love over the past couple years. And we got a good issue for you guys today. We are looking at issue 12, volume 3. This came out in April 1997. I don't know why I said 2000. I wanted to go 2007. I don't know why. But we are looking at the Vampire Cat of the Geishu, which there's also another title. If you're reading in the Usagi Yojimbo saga, like the massive books, it is also titled the Obakuneko of the Geishu clan. I'm pretty sure I just, butchered that name, because I butcher a lot of names, But, let's get on with it. Let's talk about this. Let's get into this particular issue of Usagi Yojimbo. So this issue starts out with Usagi. He's walking. It's getting dark outside. He's playing his flute, playing his little flute tune. Usagi has that musical talent, He's like, it's getting dark out here, I don't think there's a moon out tonight. And he starts walking. He's like, I know there's a place around here somewhere I can rest until morning. This area definitely looks familiar, Usagi says. And he's like, I think there's a home around here. And he's like, gods, he is taken back. He is aghast and like shocked to what he sees. Usagi ends up dropping his flute. He says, this is Lady Takagi's mansion. How could this have gotten like this, he says. And after that, we go into a flashback to the Dragon Bellow Conspiracy. Actually, it's after the Dragon Bellow Conspiracy, where Usagi teamed up with Tomoe and Gin and the Neko ninjas to overthrow a coup that was happening in the government. They wanted to stop, I think it was the attack the shogunate, if I remember correctly. I just hit my book. And we see Usagi talking with the Neko ninjas. He's like, thank you for your help. And they're like, yeah, we had our own interest in this samurai. Nothing personal, but our alliance is over. All the Neko ninjas run off. Tomoe says, come on, we've got to get back to the Geishu Province to report all this to Lord Noriyuki. His army is already advancing, is what she says. So they kind of run off, and Gin happens to remark that, hey, don't forget, you said there was a reward in this for me. But, they kind of disregard what he says, and they just run off and leave Gin in the dust, I feel like. They're kind of rude, I feel like. They don't want to, take into consideration Gin's feelings, I feel like, Later, some time has passed. Tomoe, Usagi, and Gin have actually reached a checkpoint. This is a checkpoint for Lord Tamakuro, and Tamakuro is dead, obviously, but his men do not know that. And Usagi's like, hey, maybe I can bluff my way through this, because he's still wearing the Tamakuro's garb that his men were wearing. And Gin's like, why don't we just fight them? And Usagi's like, nah, let's not do that. And the guards are like, halt, who goes there? And Usagi's like, I was ordered by Captain Tomoe, I think that's what his name was, to escort these through the Geishu border. And they're like, okay, well, what's the password? And Usagi kind of freezes up, and he's like, password? And this is where all hell breaks loose. Usagi, Tomoe, and Gin all get ready to fight. We get this fun little fight scene where they're all fighting. Tomoe says, stop, your lord is dead. Usagi yells out, you're throwing away your lives needlessly. Gin, on the other hand, my man Gin, He says, I'm charging you for each one of these I slay, samurai. Which, Gen's mind is obviously always in the right place, right? They end up taking out all the men, and Usagi notices one leaning up against a tree, of all places. And he's like kind of frozen solid, and he's like, beware. And Usagi freaks out. And Tomoe's like, Usagi, are you hurt? What's going on? Did you hear him? And they're like, no, we didn't hear this guy. What are you talking about? This guy's stone cold. He's dead. He's deader than a doornail. Tomoe says, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go to the Geishu territory. Gen is right behind her because he doesn't want to get spooked. And he's like, come on, are you coming, long ears? Gen says, and he's like, yeah, I'm coming. Later, again, night has fallen, and there's no moon out tonight. And Gen says, I don't want to stumble around here in the dark. We'd better look for a place to stay. Tomoe, she is very much scared, it seems like, and she's like, I'm unfamiliar with this region of our province, so I don't really know like any towns around here or anything like that. And we hear, excuse me, samurai. And this woman, she is shrouded in mystery. Her name is Lady Takagi, and she's like, pardon me, but I overheard your concerns. My house is not that far away. Usagi goes to introduce Tomoe and Gen to Lady Takagi. And as they're walking, Lady Takagi says, we have been long supporters of Lord Matachi, Lady Tomoe. And Tomoe says, but Lord Tamachi has been dead for years. His son, Lord Noriyuki, is head of the clan now. And Takagi says, oh, yes, I'm very forgetful sometimes, oh, woe is me. Lady Takagi ends up showing them to her house. And she's like, I'll show you to your rooms. You can rest. I'll make arrangements for a meal. You must be chilly in your under kimono. I believe that's what it is. Lady Tomoe, allow me to get one for you. I guess that's under kimono. I don't know. I think I probably butchered that. Gen ends up making a comment about the house and how he could live here permanently in a place like this. And Usagi's like, hey, don't insult our host. Which I don't know how he's insulting the host, because he's like, says like, oh, like, nice house. I like this house. And then we move on and we see Gen, Tomoe, and Usagi. They are gorging themselves on some rice and I believe probably some tofu or something like that. They all finish what they're eating, and Tomoe's like, oh, I cannot eat another bite. Usagi says, neither can I. Gen says, are y'all gonna finish that? If y'all not gonna finish that, can I eat that? Because Gen's a growing boy. He needs his nutrients, his vitamins and whatnot. I love the scene where they're eating as well, where we see Tomoe and Usagi. They're very delicate when like they kind of savor every bite. And Gen doesn't do that. He's very much like munch slobber. You can see the difference in the way they act, when they're eating. It's very interesting, that little detail that Stan Sakai adds into the issue. Tomoe goes off and she is going to ask to borrow some horses so they don't have to walk to the capital, which is a good idea, Usagi says. And Gen's like, oh, I don't want to walk around right now. I'm just going to fall asleep. And Tomoe leaves and she's like, oh, this is strange. I haven't seen any servants. Surely a home this size requires like a big staff. And we see this woman in the distance, a shadow over her. And she's at this lantern, and Tomoe says, oh, there she is, saying, oh, there's Lady Takagi. She seems to be leaning over this lamp, and we see her open this lamp and lean forward, and she starts to lap up the oil that is in this lamp, which shocks Tomoe and shocks me too, because I'm like, do you really want to be eating that kind of oil, like, in your body? Like, what can that really do to you? Like, that, I mean, come on. That could probably do some damage, I have to say. Tomoe and Lady Takagi end up making eye contact, and we see that Lady Takagi has transformed into some kind of Neko cat monster, which is called Obakuneko. And she's like, Tomoe says like, oh, she was drinking oil Usagi again, and Lady Takagi starts breathing fire like Godzilla, and she catches Tomoe in the back, and actually Tomoe catches on fire, and she runs through this like door, crashing through it. She's like, I gotta get these robes off, and she runs. She's like, oh, I'm still burning, I'm still on fire. I pray that there's water in this well that she jumps into, and she actually extinguishes the water, but she gets stuck in the well. Poor Tomoe. I mean, she has no luck in this issue. Usagi ends up hearing the commotion. He's like, did you hear something again? And Gen's like, you're hearing things again. You better get your ears checked. And Usagi's like, no. I'm going to go out and investigate. And Gen's like, okay. I'm taking a nap. Wake me up when it's time to go. Usagi gets his swords. He's like, I'm getting really concerned. Tomoe should have been back by now. Gen, always the fast sleeper. He ends up sleeping. We catch some Z's, and we see this thing crawling up on the ceiling, and Usagi's like, there's a sudden chill in the air. And again, he's sleeping. He's still sleeping. The candle that is lighting the room where Gen is sleeping ends up going out. Usagi's walking around trying to find out what's exactly going on here. He's like, it seems to be about, no one seems to be about, he says. He's like, Usagi again, and he hears Tomoe yelling. He's like, what happened out here? And he goes outside. He sees, like, the broken door and this and that, and again just snoring and zorting, and, and he's like, Zorn. He's sneezing, he's like, he's catching the Z's. And we see Lady Takagi. She's like, so, your friends left you slumbering alone, huh? All the easier for me. She kind of just hops out of nowhere. And she's like, drool. She starts drooling. She's like, oh, nice, warm flesh. One samurai burned to the crisp. Now the second sucked dry. Then there will be just one to contend with. She's kind of like laughing over Gen. And Usagi and Tomoe come in, and they're like, wake up, Gen. Gen gets slashed across the face, and he wakes up, and he's like, he kind of kicks at Lady Takagi. She jumps over them. It's like this leap over Usagi and Gen and Tomoe. And she's like, they're like, get back, monster demon, as Usagi tries to slash at her. Usagi asks how is Gen as he's trying to hold off this demon. And the demon's kind of perched up on the side of the corner of the room, up on the ceiling. Gen's passed out. He's unconscious. Tomoe says apparently, or maybe, her claws had poison in them. Lady Takagi starts to laugh, and she's like, and she starts to like have this like gust of wind, like it doesn't seem like, I don't know if it's like a vortex or something, but it's where like Tomoe and Usagi can't breathe, they're choking. So I don't want to say it's like maybe she's sucking the air out of the room. I'm not 100% sure what exactly is going on at that moment. It's kind of hard to see, or maybe she has them in like this like wind thing. I don't know exactly. But they can't breathe. But they get outside, and she's like, Usagi says, "We'll have to worry about him later," because Tomoe is actually worried about Gen. And we get hear this big whoosh of wind, and it blows open the door, and Usagi and Tomoe are thrown, like thrusted, whatever, knocked back, And we see Lady Takagi jump up in the tree, starts to laugh. She starts to shoot these spikes out of her hands. They're like thorns or needles. And one of them actually hits Tomoe, and her arm goes numb. And Usagi is like, are you okay? And this is when we find out her arm goes numb. It's like, I'm a little helped you, Tomoe says, you'll need to stop her. Usagi tells Tomoe to get away from here. You still got an obligation to return to Lord Noriyuki. I'll make sure she doesn't pursue you. And Tomoe's like, but Usagi, and Usagi's like, leave now. And Tomoe's like, I'll be back. I swear I'll be back with help. And I love this little detail, which I never really caught before, but Usagi just jumps off the ground onto the roof. I mean, I don't know if I would ever put two and two together. Obviously rabbits good at jumping. Usagi good at jumping. I love that little added detail of using the animal's attributes and abilities, like a normal animal's attributes and abilities for Usagi. I know he has good eyesight and good hearing and stuff like that, but I never put two and two together that, oh yeah, Usagi's really good at jumping. Usagi gets up on the roof where Lady Takagi is, and she's like, ha 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 ha. You follow me to the rooftops? Are you so anxious to meet your death, samurai? Gaze into my eyes. And her eyes start to glow, and she's like, my eyes. And for a split second, Usagi gets hypnotized, but he shakes it off, and he's like, no. And she's like, curse you, samurai. And she starts to breathe fire at him. Usagi, unfortunately, drops his katana. And I love this little detail of Usagi trying to reach and grab for his katana, and it sadly falls. I love the panel layout that Stan Sakai actually has in this issue. And Lady Takagi ends up starts to charge at Usagi. Usagi tries to brace for the impact, and she gets on top of him, and Usagi ends up taking out his wakizashi. Yes, his wakizashi. I happen to know how to pronounce that now because I listened to the Ronin Rabbit, Ed Moore's podcast. Fun little podcast. Go check it out. It's a must listen if you like Usagi stuff. It's the only other Usagi podcast other than mine. Usagi ends up going and stabbing Lady Takagi, and he actually cuts her head off. That's what it was. He cuts her head off, and he falls down. Usagi ends up hitting his head, and he ends up passing out. Usagi ends up waking up, and we hear, hello, Usagi, and we see Mariko, the woman Usagi loves. The woman he fathered a child with, Jotaro. And I'm like, what's going on here, Usagi? Where did Mariko show up, But sadly, she's like, it's time for you to wake up, my love. And Usagi's like, you are beautiful, or are you just a dream? And sadly, Mariko was just a dream. So we end up seeing Tomoe, and Tomoe's like, what's going on? And Usagi's like, Tomoe, my head, are you all right? And Usagi, let's just point it out, Usagi simps hard for Tomoe and Mariko. But since he can't have Mariko, he could go for Tomoe, I feel like. He did just say she was beautiful. Tomoe is a pretty nice looking lady, I have to say. Cat lady, Usagi kind of laughs it off and gets up, and Tomoe's like, oh, are you fine? So is Gin, and Usagi's like, oh, it must be my head, I must have hit my head. He's like, oh yeah, you're delusional and whatnot. But luckily Lord Noriyuki shows up with Gin. They were not that far behind. And they end up finding out that, they're like, oh man, why is Lady Takagi's house in ruins? what's going on? And again, it's like, yeah, it's a mystery. Nobody really knows. And we end up finding out from one of Lord Noriyuki's men. He's like, excuse me, Lord Noriyuki, perhaps I can explain. So the unnamed Tiger Man, he says that he's actually grown up in this area. This home belonged to Lord Takagi, a samurai of terrible temper. Once in a fit of rage, he slew his wife. She had a faithful cat who lapped up her blood as she lay dying and disappeared. Takagi soon took a new wife, a beautiful creature with long silken hair. One moonless night, with no warning, she butchered Lord Takagi and the entire household. Before she was slain, people say she was the first wife's faithful pet, returned as an Obakuneko, to exact revenge for her mistress. So we found out what's happening. We also end up finding out that this was actually 25 years ago, and Takagi Mansion has been vacant ever since. And the Tiger Man says, people say that the Obakuneko appears on moonless nights to lure in unwary travelers to this mansion and to their death. But of course, this is just a story to frighten little children. And we see Usagi, Tomoe, and Gen's faces they're like, oh my god, this is not a story. This is real, because their eyes get really big. Then we end up traveling back to the present, and we see Usagi, and he's like, man, I'm glad that, that's over with. I would never want to go through that again. With the Obakuneko as is dead, I'm glad they're dead. You can never know what supernatural stuff you might run into. And he's like, it's all began with the voice in the moonlight, the night like this. And we hear, excuse me, samurai. And Usagi was like, what's going on? And he was like, whoa, he runs off, he takes off, and we see not an Obakuneko, but we see the woodcutters, Mr. and Mrs. Woodcutter. And they're like, what's the matter with him? And they're like, I have no idea what's going on or what just went on, all they wanted to know was this the right road to the Geishu capital. That's all they wanted to know. And they're like, samurai, there's just no figuring them out, is there? And they're like, yeah, I agree. There's no figuring them out. I thank God I'm just a poor peasant. And that's how this issue ends. This issue was so much fun. I love it when Stan Sakai brings in the supernatural element with the Onis and the demons and stuff like that. The creepy crawly things that go bump in the night. I said this before. Every time I read one of these issues with the demons or whatever, is a very well crafted issue. I really like it that it's a flashback issue as well, to where we get to see Tomoe and Gen and whatnot, and the Dragon Bellow Conspiracy is a really big story in the Usagi Yojimbo universe. It was the very first big multi-story I want to say event almost, and to see what happened afterwards, because we did see a little bit what happened with when Usagi and Gen ended up meeting up back with Zatuino. I almost forgot his name. Zatuino, the blind swords pig. And we got to see that, but we never got to see, what exactly was going on before that, which I like this here. It was very creepy. And I liked how Stan Sakai set everything up, and all the action was perfect. So, the mood setting and all that. I love the little funny, bits of, all them getting scared and whatnot, and, them joking around. I feel like the three of them have a really good rapport. All they're friends or whatever. They have a really good rapport, and especially with Gen and Usagi and stuff. I always like it when they get together. And Tomoe is just probably one of the best characters in this book. We don't get to see her a lot. I feel like it's been some time since we've actually seen Tomoe, and I loved seeing her in this issue and her like really kind of take charge almost and fight the Neko, which was really cool, and see like I love seeing like her thought process of like how to adapt to a situation and stuff like that, which was really, really cool. I'm glad to see that she got out of the well. I was scared for Tomoe. I thought maybe she would just, be the next ring girl. What was her name? Ringu, whatever. I forget what her name is. She start crawling out of like TVs or something, But yeah, this issue was a lot of fun. I just want to say thank you for listening. I know it's been some time since I've recorded an episode. I hope you guys are still with me on this journey to continue talking about Usagi and all his friends, Usagi Yojimbo, and whatnot. Hopefully I can get some more frequent with my scheduling and whatnot. Since I started doing YouTube as well again, I've been doing a lot. I've been wearing a lot of hats recently, creatively. I've been doing YouTube again. I've been doing my podcast and my other podcast, Otakuology. So I'll try not to let things slip through the cracks when coming to the Usagi Podjimbo podcast. I definitely want to get there, but let me know what you guys think of this issue, this episode. You can comment on Spotify, and I'll respond to you. I love getting feedback and whatnot. Just want to thank you for listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next podcast episode. This was such a fun episode to talk about. I love this. I love this issue. I love when we get really good, solid, standalone Usagi stories, which coming up, we're going to get into another big crossover pretty soon with Grass Cutter. But before we get to Grass Cutter, we actually are getting into one of the Usagi Yojimbo color specials next time on the podcast. I'm excited to talk about that. So enjoy the next episode of the podcast whenever that comes out, and go read some Usagi Yojimbo. I'll catch you guys on the next vid.